One of our viewers wanted to know if you would mind explaining altar stones, the need for them, their placement, why there are saints' relics in them. She also asked if it was important to know which particular relics are in the stone so as to invoke those particular saints.
Well, the altar stone is actually the altar. I mean, one could have a grand wooden altar, hand carved, gilded, statues of saints, and yet you remove the altar stone, you couldn't offer Mass on it. But if you just had the altar stone alone, you could offer Mass on the altar stone. In fact, priests during World War II and World War I, who were chaplains, would carry the altar stone in their Mass kit because they would have to, wherever they went, even on the hood of a Jeep, they could offer Mass if the altar stone was there. Because the altar stone contained relics of two martyrs, at least two martyrs. Why? Because in the earliest days of the Church, when the martyrs were giving their lives publicly for fidelity to Christ, their bodies would be taken and buried, usually in the catacombs, possibly in mausolea if they were from a well-to-do family. In the catacombs, there were arcosolio, a certain structure where often the Mass would be offered, or actually there were marble slabs in which the relics of the martyrs would be placed, and the earliest Masses would be offered over the relics of the martyrs. It was a Catholic practice in the earliest days that the earliest Masses were offered over the relics of the martyrs. We have a prime example of that in St. Peter himself. St. Peter's burial place up the Vatican Hill from the Circus of Nero, some say the Circus of Domitian. St. Peter's burial place became a place of pilgrimage. Well, there's a history behind that we won't get into right now because they're complicated. If you want to come to Rome with me, I'll show you, okay? And the necropolis. But in any case, the martyred relics of St. Peter were buried there, and then the popes who came after him, Linus and Cletus and Clemens, Sisters Cornelius, the ones we read about in the Mass, they were all buried around the body of St. Peter. Then the entire basilica, Constantine built the entire basilica of St. Peter's right over that spot, and he placed the high altar he placed the altar of the basilica directly over the spot where Peter was buried. And what this demonstrates is the Catholic understanding that the blood of the martyrs really was the seat of the Church, as Tertullian said, and that the Catholic Mass and the sacrifice of our Lord and the sacrifices of the martyrs really belong together. You know, there's a certain unity there, and a unity with the Church and its history, going back to the age of the early martyrs. That's why when Paul VI came out with his new rules for the liturgy and did away with the need for the altar stone and the relics, it was such a shocking thing that he did. It was as though he broke that continuous tradition of the Church for all those centuries, rooted into the profession of faith of the martyrs who died for our Lord. And now you take the relics out of the altar, and what do you have? You have a table. It's just a mensa. It's just a bald table. And that's what they have in the New Order. It is not an altar. They don't require the altar stones to be used because they don't require the relics of the martyrs to be used anymore. I told you about Our Lady of Perpetual Help here in Sedamsville, suburb of Cincinnati, where the church was being closed down, and they wrenched the altar stones out of the altars and actually stacked them on the steps going down into the sacristy, so you're walking over the top of them with the martyrs' relics still in them. This is the contempt that the Novus Ordo shows for the martyrs, the Church, Christ himself. And fortunately, we were able to rescue them, but not before they had already been, shall we say, abused in this way. But that altar stone containing the relics is actually hollowed out. There's a hollowed out portion of the altar stone called the sepulchre, and the relics of the martyrs are placed in there solemnly and a part of the ceremony of consecrating the altar. And then they are sealed over with kind of a marble disc, and then they are mortared shut, right? As though the tomb was sealed. You have to have that where Mass is to be offered. If you don't have that, you cannot offer Mass, except on a real altar with the relics of the martyrs, traditionally. But the true Mass is offered over the relics of the martyrs to this day.
Is it important to know which particular saint?
And that is not necessary to know. I'm sure in the records of the parish, or the records of the diocese, for example, in the parish, when the bishop were to come and to consecrate or dedicate the church and bless the altar, that notations would have been made of what relics were being placed in the sepulchre of the altars. I mean, not all altars are solid stone, like marble. You can have altars such as ours at Immaculate Conception, which are one solid slab of marble. The whole top, the whole mensa, as they call it, is the altar stone, because the relics are buried directly into that one solid piece of stone. And that rests, is mortared onto other stones that actually rest upon a structure that goes into the earth. So technically speaking, the church could not only be dedicated, it could be consecrated. If you're in a Catholic church and you see they have a stone altar, and you look along the sides of the church and you see 6 stone crosses embedded in the wall on each side, you're in a consecrated church. Otherwise, you're in a dedicated church. Well, right. There are rules about that we won't get into now, but in any case, but it all has to go back to that altar and centers around where the Holy Sacrifice is offered. And it is offered traditionally as Catholics, as a Catholic Mass over relics of the martyrs. Even if we have rescued these altar stones and they're still intact, we don't have access to the records of what martyrs' relics were placed in there. Rarely did they write them on the underside of the altar stone, very rarely. But as long as they are intact and the seal is unbroken, we know the martyrs' relics are there, and they can be used as the altars.
Wow.